Right. So the speaker for tonight is not a stranger to Flex. He's actually a member of the executive board of Flex, and he's been associated with Flex, I believe, from its beginning in the United Kingdom. He's working on Flex Connect platform in the past. He's been part of our activities, not only in the United Kingdom, but also in Ghana. Dr. Apia is a mate from KNUST. We both read civil engineering. And after KNUST, I came to United Kingdom and I studied MBA at the University of Westminster. And Dr. Apia copied me. Soon
I
after I
would
came
say
to
that.
Soon after I came to United Kingdom, he also came to United Kingdom, and he went to the University of Hull to undertake an MBA as well. And later on, we went to Nottingham Trent, right?
That's right.
Nottingham Trent, yes, where he pursued his PhD in procurement. Um, so Dr. Pierre is someone that I have known, a very conscientious person who doesn't take his work for a joke. He currently runs his own consultancy in the United Kingdom, and I've been trying to convince him to come to Ghana. I'm sure very soon he'll come to Ghana and set up a consultancy business here, and I'll be partnering with him. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wouldn't say much more. I introduce to you Dr. Samuel Appiah. Doc, please take it over from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. John Kisi. Um, and also, I just want to thank you for the good work you're doing in Flex. As you said, we have been on and off, on Flex, but I know, since you came up with this idea, about 20 or so, 10 years ago, it goes back further than that. Yeah, many people have, been blessed by this by Flex, I should put it this way. And I have personally, been blessed by Flex. And so thank you for the good work you're doing. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about systems thinking. 2 seconds, if I can just share my screen. I'll unshare. So it's like that.
All the points of all you.
Okay. I'll try again. Sorry, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. Oh,
You can.
yeah, I saw your presentation was gone again.
It's gone. Okay, 2 seconds. I will just do that. Can you see it now?
Yeah, I see.
Perfect. Yeah. So sorry about that. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna be talking to you about thinking in systems, for effective problem solving. Just before I get into it, just a little bit about myself. I know Dr. John Kisi has already introduced me. My background is in civil and structural engineering, a member of the Institution of Civil Engineering and Project Association for Project Management. In terms of practice, I run Stanwell Consulting Limited, providing civil and structural engineering services together with project management and procurement advisory services. In academia, I work for the Nottingham Trent University on part-time basis, teaching on their MSc construction project management course, teaching procurement and construction management modules. Now, I had my first brush on systems thinking back in the late 1990s when I was doing my civil engineering degree. It was studied as a systems engineering. And I must say, it was a bit of an abstract to me at that point. But later in the early 2000s, when I was doing my MSc or MBA, I came into contact with systems thinking again, but this time it was presented to me as a problem solving tool. So the title of the module was was creative problem solving. And since then, I've been applying, systems thinking in my work, in engineering, and also an area of my research, I've been pursuing recently is systems thinking in project management and major construction procurement. So I'm sort of applying systems thinking in my profession. And the idea of this presentation is to equip you with some tools, with some concepts to enable you to also start using systems thinking. So just to give you an overview, I would just start with an introduction and then touch on the component of a system. If we're saying system thinking, what are the components within? And also talk about systems theory, which underpins the process of systems thinking, together with some key concepts of systems thinking. And then I would give you some examples that will enable you to be able to apply systems thinking in your work, and also give you some tools to add to your toolkit. So as an introduction, we often get bogged down in the details, and sometimes we look too closely at a situation or a problem without considering the complexities, the relationships and implications involved. It's always a lot easier to see things when you are up close to it. But being too close can sometimes give you a blurred, view and a distorted view. So sometimes it's best to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And this is what systems thinking is all about, taking a holistic view of things, seeing and understanding the relevant aspects of the whole system. Now, the essence of systems thinking is in seeing the world in a particular way. And this is really important because how we see things affect the way we approach situations or affect the way how we solve problems, and how we see things is also influenced quite heavily by our background, by experiences, education, training, and even the culture of the society we live and work in. I read a story about a group of professionals, a physicist, engineer, architect, surveyor, and a marketing person, who were each given a barometer and asked to find the height of a church tower. And the physicist, knowing, that air pressure changes with height, took the barometer reading at the bottom of the tower and the reading at the top, and using his formula calculated the height of the church tower. The engineer, dropped the barometer and measured the time it took to hit the ground. And just last week, I was doing something similar. I was trying to work out, when a roof fails, the impact with which it will hit a floor and whether the floor will collapse or not. And I was able to advise the client based on, the calculations I did. So this is how the engineer went about it. And the architect tied the barometer to a strength, took it to the top and lowered it down until it touched the ground. And he measured the length of the string, and that gave him the height of the tower. The surveyor, just measured the shadow cast by the barometer in its upright position, and also measured the shadow cast by the church tower. And using the ratio, and the size of the barometer, he was able to calculate the height. The marketing person, and I like this guy, not knowing, some of these complicated formulas and approaches that the, engineers and architects and physicists are using, he decided to go to the sexton, the church bell ringer, and said, if you could tell me the height of this church tower, I will give you this barometer. And say, yes, that's the height. And so the marketing guy got the answer. The others also got the answers. But one thing, we can learn about this is the fact that they all use a different approach. So in most cases, you realize that there is more than one way to handle any situation. And it's also important, to consider different views, because we tend to deal with people who have their own viewpoint. So you have to remember that you're dealing with people and their different viewpoints. And this is what systems thinking helps us to do, to be able to, identify and consider all these different viewpoints in a problem situation. So the question, what is systems thinking? It's a framework for seeing interrelationships rather than things, for seeing patterns rather than static snapshots, and a set of general principles spanning, diverse fields in physics and social sciences and engineering and management. As I said, I came into contact with systems thinking when I was studying engineering, and also came in contact with it whilst I was studying, business management. So it's sort of a universal, and it's as a concept, it's applied in different disciplines. Now, system thinking involves looking at the interconnections between parts of a whole rather than concentrating just on the parts. Doing that could lead you into a rabbit tunnel. So it's always important to look at, the whole. So on the next slide, I just want to talk about the parts of systems. Systems thinking views a problem as a collection of components that interact with each other. This collection of parts and the relationships between them can also be called a system. So a system is a set of elements, parts interconnected in such a way that they produce their own pattern of behavior over time. And the parts of a system can be tangible things that you can touch and see, like buildings, raw materials, product infrastructure, people. It can also be less tangible, like behavior, feelings, culture, teams. And so it can be anything that you decide to analyze or to solve. And that's the good thing about systems thinking, which is why it's a multidisciplinary tool. Okay, so just looking at typical examples. During the coronavirus, I believe I wasn't the only one, who heard a lot about respiratory systems. In the UK, kept talking to us about respiratory systems, which comprises the nose, the mouth, throat, voice, and lungs, but within the body, there are also other systems like the immune system. Again, we heard a lot about immune system during the coronavirus. antibodies, blood cells, and, these are all parts of the system that they call, immune system, and also the digestive system. Now, you can look at the different, parts like the digestive system, the immune systems as a system, okay, one system. You can also look at the collection of these different organs and functions within the body as one system. Okay, so the respiratory, the cardiovascular, the digestive, the immune system, it can also be viewed as component within the human body as a system. Okay. Another example is organizational system. You can view your organization as a system, and the department within the organization, including, admin, finance, and marketing, and what have you, can be viewed as a system. And within the finance, you can also see that as a system, and divide it into whatever you want to, in order to, solve whatever problem you are dealing with. So this is just a typical, a simplified, example of a system. Now, systems can be at different levels. The parts within the system are the subsystems. So this typical example here, we can take on the right, the diagram on the right is a single system, okay? It could be an organization. It could be a university. Now, within the system, you could have the facilities management, you could have the IT, you can have the marketing, and all these as different entities within that system. They are the subsystems, okay? Now, when you put these different organizations similar to your organization, your university, similar to that together, that also come together or can come together as one system. And that is called a meta system. Okay, so when you are trying to solve a problem within a team, within a company, you can look at it at subsystem level, you can look at it at system level, and you can look at it at a meta system level. And the good thing about systems thinking is it enables you to zoom, into a particular aspect, a particular area, and also zoom out of it, so you're able to sit above it and look at what is happening and go within it and take a close-up, view of what is going on. So these are the parts of a system. And in summary, a system contains elements, and it is the actors within it. And as I say, it could be human beings, it could be, parts of it could be buildings, it could be whatever you are trying to analyze in your problem. And the elements do not just exist in isolation, but the elements are connected together. And in systems thinking, the interconnections are also really important. So the elements are connected in a unique way to achieve the function or the purpose of the system. And this can be physical connections, with pipes or threads, whatever, connecting them together, or it can just be flow of information. So if you're looking at an organization as a system, they don't have to be in one building, but through the flow of information, through, coordination, they can be seen as one system performing a particular function or purpose. So this is just the element within a system. So I just want to take you through, give you a brief introduction of systems theory, which underpinned the process of systems thinking. Lemfe is considered as one of the founders of systems thinking. Systems thinking has been around for a long time, and the systems theory, he describes systems theory as, general systems theory, as a general science of wholeness. And take note of that. As a general science of wholeness, the meaning of the somewhat mystical expression and the whole is more than the sum of its parts. It's simply that constitutive characteristics are not explainable from the characteristics of the isolated parts. And the characteristics of this complex therefore appear as new or emergent. What he's trying to say here is, let's take cake as an example. Cake that we eat as a system. To get your cake, you have to mix your flour, you have to heat it, you have to make all the things they add, to it to get a nice cake. Now, the characteristics of cake won't tell you anything about a flour or the heat that is used to, prepare the cake. So the individual parts within the system, their characteristics may not be, the same as the characteristics of the whole that they form. So that's why I'm saying that the sum of its parts is simply, the constitutive characteristics are not explainable from the characteristics of the isolated parts. And how you mix the parts together, how they connect together is what gives it, the unique form to give you the system. You take, a building, for instance, the builders are going to use cement, they are going to use, blocks, they are going to use concrete, but a pile of stones and heap of cement, it's not, it doesn't look anything like your building. So how the cement, the blocks, the concrete are mixed together, that is what gives this nice thing called walls. And the way we arrange the walls then gives us what we live in as a building. And so the building emerges from the interaction between the isolated parts. Okay, so the main assumption of systems theory is that complex system is made up of multiple smaller systems. And it is the interactions between these smaller systems that create a complex system, right? Systems thinking is applied in different disciplines. System psychology, for instance, examines human behavior and experiences within complex systems. Individuals, communities, or populations can be considered as systems, and you can study that as one part, one whole. And also in management, an organization can be viewed as a system, the unified system of interrelated or connected parts or subsystems. In social work, for instance, a family unit can be viewed as a complex system containing its own systems and feedback loops that I'll talk to you about in a little while. And also the concept of family systems enable practitioners to examine and improve, family functioning. So system thinking is applied in all sorts of disciplines. And I'm sure whatever your profession is, you can apply systems thinking in solving problems within your area of work. For instance, at NASA, system engineering is defined as a methodical, multidisciplinary approach for the design, realization, technical management, operation, and retirement of a system. To them, a system is a combination of elements that function together to produce the capability required to meet a need, right? Now, the value added by the system is a whole. The value added by the system as a whole is primarily created by the interrelationship among the parts, and it's beyond that of the value contributed by the parts, so it adds to what, Bertalanffy said, that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Just a few concepts, system thinking, it's quite a complex concept, but it shouldn't be. I will just give you the basic concept, which will enable you to start using systems thinking, and then you can decide to delve deeper to cover some of the models within it. So to start with, one of the basic concepts of system thinking is interconnectedness. Many of us are familiar, with the logical way of thinking, the logical approach, which is the linear approach. This happened, that is why that happened, this cause and effect way of thinking. But system thinking is based on a rather secular way of thinking, because everything is connected around us. Everything we see on daily basis is connected to something, which is also connected to something else. You are connected to, those around you. And this man, John Donne, I like what he said, that no man is an island. It's a common quote that we hear, that no man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the whole. He was talking about Europe, that no man is entire of himself. You are connected to, others, and, you are part of your society, whether you like it or not. You influence your society, and your society is influenced, by you. And, even the plants around us, plants inhale carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen. Humans do the other, the opposite, inhale oxygen. If the plants decide to go on strike, I don't know what will happen to us. We'll run out of oxygen. So, whether you are looking at human or inanimate objects as a system, it's important to bear this concept, bear this in mind, that we are all connected. And so we can influence, one another. Let me go back. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So the next concept is synthesis. Synthesis is the combination of two or more things or ideas to create something new. And in order to understand systems thinking, this is very important. Whilst analysis is about breaking things down into smaller, manageable components, for close examination, synthesis is about making sense of things in the context of the problem you are trying to solve, and so it's just about how these elements, how these parts are connected, to create something new. And then the concept of emergence, it explains how big things comes from combination of smaller parts. So it's sort of related to synthesis, which is a combination of, different things to create something new. So when different parts, different items are connected, emergence is, what comes, the outcome of it. So the outcome that occurs when different items or people interact together, that is the emergence, the concept of emergence. And a typical example is collective behavior. What parts of a system do together that, they would not do alone. And a typical example, is people protesting, going on protest, and sometimes destroying things, in the UK here, blocking, motorways. Now, together, collectively, they can behave in a certain way, but take one of them out and they wouldn't think of, going to block the motorway. So in analyzing things, in system thinking, it's important to also consider the collective behavior. How is the system behaving because of the interaction between the different parts? The next concept I'll talk about is feedback loop. Feedback loops, in simple terms, it means the element in a system have an effect on each other. And these effects create feedback loop. So systems have input and output. Remember the concept of interconnectedness. The flow takes place through the interconnections. So feedback loop occurs when the output of a system ultimately affects its input, causing the system to feed back into itself. Right. So it can be, compound interest, as a typical example. You save £100 or 100 Ghana cedi, for 1 year. At the end of the year, you're going to get, depending on your interest, let's say 10%, you're going to get £10, on top of that. If you don't spend that interest and you add, to the original amount, it's going to increase the returns you're going to get the following year. So it's sort of feeding back to what you're saving and creating a loop. That is reinforcing feedback. We've got two types of feedback loops. One is reinforcing, the other one is balancing. So we hear the term vicious cycle. It's like a reinforcing feedback. It keeps happening and feeding into each other. A balancing loop, a feedback loop, is one which action attempts to bring, two things to balance. And an example is a thermostat. You set your thermostat at a desired level, and the heat is pumping, the heater is pumping in your room. It's sort of increasing the temperature within the room, which is different to the temperature outside. So we try to balance it, to the temperature that you have set. So that's the balancing feedback loop. So it's like the action of one actor and reaction of another reinforces in the reinforcing feedback. But in terms of the balancing, it sort of try to balance the system. Okay. This is another example of a feedback loop. A little bit more complex, but it's important. It's quite critical in understanding whether an intervention is working or not working. And I'm using Pharaoh's example of a feedback loop representing the introduction of a new school curriculum. Now, what is going on here is, there was a high dropout rate, increase in dropout rate. So the district introduced a new curriculum with the intent to improve, quality of teaching, increase student engagement, and also through the increase in student engagement, reduce this dropout rate. But what happened was the new curriculum had some side effect. It increased the workload, of the staff, who were already overloaded. And over time, the teachers became, burnt out and stressed. And this also undermined their quality of teaching, undermined their, the student and engagement. So in the loop, let me just use this. Yeah. Yeah, so you can see that it was having, a positive impact by first, increasing quality of instruction, increasing student engagement, but the student, some unaddressed trauma, having this new curriculum became a little bit, unstable, and it led to an increase in dropout rate. And also with the teachers' workload increasing, stress, setting, and it affected the student-teacher relationship. So the problem they were trying to solve, because they didn't assess the unintended consequences, properly before introducing this intervention, it wasn't effective. So what we're trying to say is that, before you introduce an intervention or as part of your problem solving, it is important to identify the feedback loops within the system or within the problem, and to be able to address those feedback loops. Just the reinforcing feedback, for instance, break it so it will stop feeding the problem you're trying to solve. Another concept is causality. This causality is the idea that there is a cause and effect. It's about how different things influence one another within a system. So identifying how and why one thing happened because of another. I brought in, two new staff, and all of a sudden the team started behaving in a different way. All of a sudden you were expecting, performance to increase, but it affected performance. Is it because of the influence of these new members? So it's just identifying the cause and effect of different actions. So when developing an intervention to address an issue, within one part of a system, is always important to review the potential effect or side effect of the system. Sorry, side effect of this new intervention. Okay. And then system mapping. System mapping is just the process of creating a diagram to represent the element and relationships of your system. In fact, it's one of the basic concepts. You're trying to understand a problem situation, you're trying to understand your teams and the performance, you're trying to understand the behavior of your client as a social worker. The first thing you do, and you can do it on paper or just a mental exercise, is to map out the system. Identify, the key components within the system, and how the parts of the system interrelate to form, the whole. So in system mapping, you have to identify the element within it, then you map it up with a chosen model to understand the parts and to understand what is going on. And it's a typical example of, a system model is the iceberg model that, I believe many of you are familiar with. It can be used to model a problem in a system. I remember when I was doing my PhD research, I used the iceberg model to try to explain the factors that influence procurement route selection. I did an interview of, interviewing a lot of consultants and experts in the UK about how they make their procurement decisions. And I realized some were making decisions based on experience, previous project, the one they used. Others were making their decisions based on company policy, and others based on the procurement approach they are familiar with, which wasn't, may not necessarily be what the client, what the project requires. And others were looking at, factors such as time, cost, quality. So the intervention I proposed was, first look at the obvious factors, such as your time, cost, quality, but it's also important to look at the hidden factors, such as, the client's image, the aspirations, all these things fit into the procurement decision. So I just use this to model procurement decision as a system, and it helped to explain the decision process to the people I was dealing with. Okay, so I want to talk about, application of systems thinking and how we can use it, the sort of programs we can use to, we can use systems thinking to analyze. When I was doing my master's, and we did this module, they introduced it as an approach for solving messy, complex problems, wicked problems, in operations management, which is true, but because I had done systems engineering, and based on what the lecturer was teaching, I felt, it's not just for operations management. So I remember after the second lecture, going to the lecturer and said, you said, this is for operations management. I think it can be used in the construction industry. And she said, no, this is for operations management, it's normally, used in operations, research. And I said, okay, but I wasn't convinced, and a few days after the end of the module, I went back to her and I said, I think this can be used. I'm pleased to say that, systems thinking has been developed a lot. It's developed since, the early 2000s, and now it's being used in all sorts of disciplines, not just operations management, not just wicked and messy and complex problems, but personal problems as well, recurring problems, where efforts seem to be addressing the symptoms rather than solving the real problem. So you can use it, in your own area of practice, but it's really more powerful in solving complex problems, when, they cannot be solved with the reductionist approach, linear thinking, approach. It's like the sort of problems that, you don't really understand the problem, let alone the solution. And also problems involving, lots of diverse opinions and conflicting requirements, problems where many diverse and dynamic interconnections between the problems exist, and also the problems sort of exist in an unstable and changing environment. Systems, thinking can be very powerful in solving such problems. And in the UK, I know the government, has published, a set of documents to encourage civil servants to use systems thinking in their day-to-day work, and also especially in policy making. So I'm pleased to say that it's not just those messy, wicked, and complex problems that are used, but you can use it to solve your own life problems. Okay, so systems thinking, as I said, is applicable to all regardless of prior knowledge or profession. And Michael Bell recommends, these three areas which should be focused to solve problems long term. So just a simple approach, said first he said detect the patterns, but I would say first you map up the problem, try to map it up, identify the systems within it, and then you detect the patterns, not just events. Then you use circular causality or feedback loops to try and understand the patterns and what is feeding the problem you're trying to solve. and then you focus on relationships rather than the parts. So can you think, of a recurring problem in your life? Can you try to, analyze it based on this simple approach? Can you detect patterns in this recurring problem? Can you see some relationships? Can you see the parts within it? Now, systems thinking requires, it's like a mindset, a way of thinking. And to switch from linear thinking to systems thinking, it requires a bit of practice. And Zoe McKee's method of thinking systems suggests these tips. So I just give you these few tips to help you. First, it says that don't blame others, rather think about what is influencing someone to think in a certain way. Don't assume you know the answer. Remember the professionals who solved this tower problem. So don't assume you know the answer, but think that you know one of the solutions to the problem. Look for proof that that confirms your solution, then look for evidence that disconfirms it. Also, don't focus on a certain thing. You end up in a rabbit hole. Rather, inspect the variables that influence or affect that thing. And also, don't focus on the negative behavior. Try to detect the motivations behind it. This person is behaving in this negative way all the time. What is the motivation? What is driving this behavior? So try to understand the symptoms, the driving force behind it. And 5, don't focus on words people say, rather observe how they are saying them. Read between the lines. What other words are they hiding by saying the words they say? And don't focus on what individuals are doing. Instead, take a look at the system's dynamic. What forces are driving the individuals to act in a particular way. So how would you address a recurring underperformance issue at the workplace? How do you solve a recurring family issue? How would you go about it? Now, this is just a simple approach. First, identify the system, the subsystems within it. Identify the interrelationships within the element, and the performance. Okay, what are the systems or the components of this team or of this workplace? What are the relationships between the team, between the stakeholders, between who is saying what and why they're saying that? Identify the relationship, and if you can, present the system visually. And then identify the patterns. What are the collective behaviors? Ask yourself questions to develop an in-depth understanding, of the issue. Apply the concept, the feedback loops. Is there any reinforcing feedback, anything that is causing bottleneck in the flow of information, in the flow of the system? Is this emerging behavior emerging out of, this interaction between these parts or that part? And by identifying the patterns, by identifying the structures, by identifying, the collective behavior, you can hopefully come up with a plan of intervention, which should be effective in addressing those driving forces behind the problem you're trying to solve. All right. So I just want to give you some system thinking tools that you can use to think in systems. A number of tools have been and techniques have been developed over the decades, to support this process of thinking. And one of them is a rich picture. A rich picture. Rich pictures help to express and understand a problem and the system it sits within. the team or the individual, doesn't exist in isolation. So you use the rich picture to try to map out the problem and the system, So for this example, it's just a team, at the start of a complex project, involving multiple stakeholders influenced by different factors, decided to understand what are the conflicting, views here. This department may be concerned about the cost. It's a new technology. It may align with, other policies, or these people may be concerned about jobs. It may be stakeholders, others concerned about the environment, climate change, campaigners, others may be in favor of the policy. For instance, the aspect, aspect in the field who want to see the policy being implemented. And so this is just a typical example of how, before you develop a policy, you can identify the different views and the different problems that, your system sits within. And it can also enable you to identify your collaborating community who will be best to, join your team. Another tool or model you can use to help you in systems thinking practice is the PIC model. The PIC model helps in understanding stakeholder views of the system. So it can be used to identify collaborating community for your project. How do they see, your project as stakeholders? Maybe this department, in this example, others see it as out of date, others, see it as an important provider of job, see it as it is fine, but there may be others. So the PIG model is used to identify different views about the problem you are trying to solve, different views within your stakeholders. Why is it called a PIC model? It is based on the idea that a PIC is seen differently by different people. To the farmer, a PIC is seen as a source of income. To the wolf, PIC is seen as food. To the poet, PIC is seen as a source of inspiration. To the veterinary officer, a PIC is a patient. I don't know how you see a pig, whether it's a pet or a patient or a source of protein. I'll leave that to you. Another tool that you can use in systems thinking is feedback loop. Feedback loop, it's just this is a typical example of a proposal to invest in electrical vehicles. How feedback loop can be used to represent the effect and the impact and the causal effect of your investment. Now, by increasing the investment, you are increasing the cost associated with electrical vehicles. And the more electrical vehicles are provided, the higher the cost of this investment. So it is sort of a negative impact on it. But it also has a positive, impact. And in this direction, you can see that by increasing investment in EV, it increases battery range and charging infrastructure. So it has a positive feedback on that. And also, if I know I'm not going to get stranded, somewhere, I can, be more comfortable or confident in investing in electrical vehicles. So by increasing the investment, it leads to, public confidence, and that also has an impact on the proportion of vehicles that you would see, a proportion of electric vehicles that you see on the road. So this is just a typical example showing how the feedback loop can be used to model, the impact of action you are taking or a decision, you want to take. Another example here is behavior over time graph. So trying to solve a problem, one of the things you can do is to represent the pattern on a graph, over 6 months period, over a 3-year period, whatever. How is this behavior changing? So behavior over time is also a very powerful way of showing what is going on within your system. And it can be as simple as, a list of enablers and inhibitors, so you can just make a simple list of enabling factors or inhibiting factors that can affect the achievement of your system goals. It can be a problem you're trying to solve. It can be a new, thing you want to introduce. What are the enabling factors? What are the inhibiting factors? It will help you to think through before you introduce that. Now, because of time, don't want to, go on and on, but just to point out these other tools. So, those who like to explore this concept further can read on the visual viable system model. It's just a theory that proposes that a complex organization is more capable of, responding to a change in an unproductive environment. And also subsystems methodology, it's used, in tackling more complex and variable issues, problems that exist in a variable environment. Yeah, so and then stock flow diagram also just shows interdependencies and feedback within a system by identifying the major accumulations and elements and actions that increase or decreases, those accumulations over time. So that's also another way you can model your system. Yeah, so just a few references you can refer to later. I use this, but if you want to learn more about the tools or about this process of, systems thinking, just get in touch with me and I'll be able to share other references, with you. So yeah, so that's about it. Thank you very much for your time. And if, as I say, you want to reach out, then I've just shared my email there with you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Pierre. Very insightful presentation. And yeah, I've learned so much systemic thinking. How do we look at the whole, rather than focusing on small part at a time. Thank you so much. So we would open the floor for questions, for clarifications, or for contributions. Anyone has any contribution to make, any addition, or anyone wants to share their experiences, please welcome to do so. So the floor is open. You can raise your hand, and then you can also put your question in the chat box. Thank you very much. Okay, so I see a first hand up from is it Kwanafi? I think I see KFE. So please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Very good evening to all.
Good evening, sir.
Dr. Sam, it's just to find out one thing. You just, in the course of your narrative for discussion, you just said that there's this issue of interconnectivity or interconnectedness between the the sub components of the system of a system of any given system. My question in the first place is: does one particular component of a whole system, if it begins to malfunction, does it necessarily affect the other parts of the other components of the whole? Like one part of the system, does it affect the other part? Since there is that element of connectivity or interrelations. If one part gets, yes, so that's my first question, please.
Yes, if one part is not performing, or one part is affected or is removed from the system, it will affect the performance of the whole system because of the interconnections. Take, a football team as a system. Now you take, the goalkeeper out of the equation. Yes, one of the players can go and, be the goalkeeper, but you realize, the number has reduced. And so it will affect their performance. It's unlikely to change the purpose or the function of the system as a whole, but it will affect the effectiveness of the system. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. I ask this because sometimes in our Ghanaian economy, some subsectors, people notify that there are certain sectors that are not working. They make a general statement: "Oh, the Ghanaian system is not working. It's not working." But I think system failure sometimes, I believe it's everywhere in any part of the world, where one part may begin to dysfunction, and for that matter, may affect the others. But people forget about this generality, and they think that if one component is malfunctioning, it must necessarily affect the other. They forget about that, and they make general statement that the Ghanaian system is not working. I think that some part is working, but other parts will not be working. But I think I understand your narrative from where you come from. So I'm very grateful.
Thank you for that. Yeah. It's all about understanding the fact that you as an individual don't exist in a void. And as a country, Ghana doesn't exist in a void. It's interconnected. It's influenced by what is going on in America, in Ukraine, for instance. So yes, one part may not be performing, but it's always important to look at the bigger picture. What is influencing this poor performance, rather than just blaming, that part which is not performing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Look, I'll wait for others.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope that addresses your question. And I kind of associate with the points where there's always this generic state or general statement that in Ghana systems don't work. There's a matter that requires further interrogation. But yeah, we'll move on for now. So there is Blessing saying, okay, I appreciate how you have broken down complex technical approaches to relate them to our everyday life. So thank you very much. I mean, that's a commentary or a commendation from Blessing. Mr. Kyo said, what's the difference between design thinking and system thinking? Because I mean, what's the difference between design thinking and system thinking?
Oh, design thinking and systems thinking. Systems thinking, it's, looking at the problem or trying to think about a situation in its pure form, in its richness. Now, design thinking, not too familiar with it, but as a designer, it's, it's a way of how do I want this, to perform? How do I want this, so how can I design this in my way based on, whatever factors that has been given to you? So system thinking is mainly just leave the situation where, as it is, and try to analyze it with all its interconnections.
So
If
design
you can,
thinking, I don't know, maybe Mr. Q can also help us here. Design
what
thinking,
you mean by design thinking, that
yeah.
will, yeah.
Mr. Q, are you able to?
Okay, yeah. Hello, yeah, I'm here.
Mhm.
I wish I knew exactly what design thinking is, but
You are a designer, Mr. Theo.
yes, but that's also a concept that is being flouted around. I've heard of it. I've not really read much about it yet.
Okay.
And so I was thinking that, from the way Doc has just broken down the systems thinking, I was thinking that there'll be some kind of relationship between the two. But, well, I'll take it as an assignment. You can go and read more on the design thinking,
Okay.
since I now understand the system thinking. But let me take this opportunity also to ask a question. If, the way we think in Ghana, I would say Africa, obviously, you would see that the thinking is not systemic. As you are trying to explain, because we try to bottle everything together and try to resolve them, not taking our time to properly look at the interconnections. Um, how do we adapt, this kind of thinking, especially on national level? Dr. Kisi at the hydrology, department. How do you solve flooding problems? Using this system of thinking to be able to resolve, for instance, all the flooding issues that we have in Accra. Because the relationships are many, and I wonder if everybody really understands how various things connect to result in the level of flooding that we have some parts of the year. So I'm just wondering, how do we adopt this kind of thinking, at ministerial levels, at the agency levels, to be able to quickly resolve the numerous problems we have as a nation? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very important question, Theo. System thinking, it's a powerful tool for addressing complex and, as I said, messy and sometimes wicked problems. And the issue of flooding could also be described as a complex problem, because it involves a lot of factors that if you rush to implement an intervention without understanding the key factors at play, the driving forces, the behaviors within it, then you realize you're going to, solve one part of the problem or a part of it, but it's only a matter of time that it will reoccur, because you were sort of addressing the symptoms rather than what is fueling it. So the UK government has published, some documents, especially these tools that I was sharing some with you, published these to encourage civil servants to use them, and you don't have to be an expert in systems thinking to use, the PIG model, for instance. You don't have to be an expert to, use the rich picture or rich diagram. Is the pig model, for instance, is just a way of understanding the different views. How does this, man on the market or lady on the market, what is the understanding of this problem? How do they see it? The stakeholders, the authorities, how do they see it? Try to understand the different views around the problem. And the rich picture, for instance, once you come up with something to start with, you email it to them, have a meeting. When they see that on paper as a diagram, it helps them to think about, okay, so yeah, you're wrong, you're not quite right in saying this is what I think about it, but this is what I really think about it. So it can be used, to encourage people to share their views, sometimes the hidden, agenda, the aspirations, to come up with some of these covert factors, but which are very important in addressing the problem. So you just have to start from somewhere, encourage, people to use the tools, and also get, people to organize seminars and stuff so that it's not just the basic tools of system thinking, but with time, people can start using systems thinking in its entirety to address the complex, issues that, we're all facing.
Thank you. Yeah.
John, if you want to add something to it, how you are addressing the problems and whether you have tried using systems thinking at all.
Well, yeah. So yes, I definitely think that systemic approach will be the best approach because there are several factors that account for the challenge that we have. And in our way, one way we've tried to address these multiple factors will be is to bring the key players into one place. Let's say so the Hydro Authority Board has representatives from the local authority, that's the Ministry of Local Government. So, the local authority, they are responsible for planning decisions. And we have all these buildings springing up in waterways and wetlands and all of that. They are the body responsible for preventing that. And then the highway authority making sure that they provide adequate drains for road infrastructure and all of that. Then we have the Institute of Civil Engineering, Institution of Engineering, also having a representative on our board to represent, the professional body or the engineering fraternity to get the message out there. So I don't think every part of the system that needs to play a role is represented on the board. However, there is ongoing collaboration among all the key players, including the Ministry of what do you call them, Lands and Natural Resources. They are the custodians of the wetlands. The wetlands that are being filled in for development and all of that. So yes, we I think there's a need to step up. They look at making sure that every member of that ecosystem, it's my friend's word that he likes to use, every member of the ecosystem is represented and take the necessary action. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So you don't necessarily need to have, every member of the ecosystem at board level, but, members of the board can represent different parts of the ecosystem. And if you charge them, so these are the areas that you, aside from your area as, institution of Ghana Institution of Engineers or hydraulic department, you can also represent this other, part of the ecosystem and try to gather their views so that, you don't only have the strong views, but those hidden views at the bottom of the chain can also be considered in those decision-making process.
That's right. So there is another question here. Are there instances where one should give up helping others to see the whole, or should one keep trying even when you are working with others who just can't get it? And that's from Benakwe.
Yeah, if you are trying to achieve, an objective, you're trying to do something with them, and it's important, to be on the same level, to sing from the same hymn sheet, so if the understanding of the problem situation is blurred, is distorted, then their contribution is unlikely to be effective. So I would say, try not to give up, try to, bring them to the level where they can see the problem as it is. They can see the interconnections, as they are. Otherwise, yes, you can leave them, but that is not going to help the achievement of the goal as a whole. So don't give up, Ben.
But is it not possible that trying to bring everybody on board can also delay the achievement of the objective and you may end up not even achieving anything at all?
the question then is, do you have the right team? Team selection, it's important to understand, how people view the problem, and I don't know the circumstances around Ben's issue, but if you're trying to solve a problem and you're identifying a team, you want to, pick someone who has an opinion, or someone who, can make useful contribution. And so if the person can get it, and then the question is, should they be in the team in the first place?
Okay. Right. I see Mr. Daniel has his hand up.
Yes, thank you very much, Doc, for that powerful presentation.
Thank you, Pastor Daniel.
Very informative and very instructional. Thank you. Help us tremendous. But I just wanted to ask whether you are aware of the fishbone diagram concept, which looks at the root cause to problems. Would it be a tool, or can it be standalone? Will be a tool to the system thinking?
Yes, you can use that as a tool in system mapping.
Okay.
Yeah. If you remember, I said, once you identify the element, you can choose a model to map it up. And so the fish, bone map or approach is just a way of representing the factors, identifying the factors. So yes, it can be used as a system mapping tool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks very much for that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Mr. Free, I think you said you had another question, but you wanted to share with
Yes,
another others.
yes, Doc. Yes,
Please
Doc.
go ahead.
Please. Thank you very much, Doc. It's just to find out this one more thing about life on Earth. If you consider the ecosystem, where as human beings, we breathe out oxygen, and the oxygen so produced by human beings into the air is utilized by plants in general in terms of the process of photosynthesis. They use carbon dioxide, they use sunlight to produce oxygen for us to breathe in. So it's just much the same way they say, if the last tree dies, the last man dies. Talking about the interconnectivity between plants and plant life and then human life, where the plant needs we human beings in terms of breathing out oxygen for them to use. And then they produce carbon dioxide into the system for us to use. My question is this: why do people keep on cutting plants away? They arbitrarily make abuse of trees in our forest. And if the forestry commissions of most countries in the world, they keep cutting them. Talking about lumbering, they cut down trees without necessarily replenishing them. My question is it because of lack of knowledge of life on Earth, or what? Or they don't know about the impact of the absence of trees on Earth? Again, I'm saying that's also destroying the ecosystem. So I don't know. This is because of lack of knowledge. Tell you what your expertise. Because of lack of knowledge that we don't know about the effect of what plants, in the absence of plants, what the adversity that human beings will go through. Is it because people don't know, or what? Please.
Okay, so well, it's partly lack of knowledge, but it's not, solely lack of knowledge. I'm sure they know, but it's also about, the other factors. Why are they cutting the tree? Because they are hungry, and if you're hungry and, you want to survive today, and somebody is talking to you about, 50 years time, impact on society, on the climate, if you don't really have a deeper understanding of, the implications, it's likely you will just, address the immediate need, which is the hunger, and therefore, cut the tree and make some money. So yes, unfortunately, people know but they don't value it. It is how they value, the trees they are cutting, how they value, the vegetation they are destroying. So yeah, it's a problem. Unfortunately, none of us are the same, level. That's why you have this climate change campaigners, making a lot of noise. Some people over here, in the UK, just blocking a motorway, putting their lives, at risk, just to drive the message home, so that somebody will listen to them. But not all of us, unfortunately, are the same level. And so that guy who is angry and, trying to make some money, or, have their own farm, unfortunately, they will, unless there is, let's say, regulation, or, something to stop them from cutting and destroying the vegetation we have around us.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well answered,
so,
Doc. Thank
so
you very
now
much.
bringing systems thinking into it. So if you are trying to solve this problem, first you need to understand the underlying reason why they're cutting the trees, and if it is because he's hungry, if I give him money, will it stop them from cutting it?
Question.
It's because of lack of understanding. If I explain the issues and the implication, will it stop them from cutting it? So from systems thinking perspective, you need to consider the different viewpoints and the different motivations behind the practice, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Good, yeah.
Right. Thank you very much, Doc.
Very wonderful presentation, good questions, and really good responses too. So we have I say thanks for a great presentation, Doc. Okay, so if there are any, okay, we've gone past our time slightly, so if there's one or two more, we'll take them, but otherwise we should be wrapping up. I don't think I've missed any question. Anyone has a question to ask or a comment to make? We'll just take one or two more and then wrap up. You can unmute and begin talking, or you can put it in the text.
Okay, I just want to make a comment now, Doc.
Please go ahead.
Okay.
The question that the gentleman asked and the answer given by Dr. Pierre, on point. But you would realize that human beings are supposed to be rational, right? So when situations arise that pushes them to some tight corner, then they become irrational. So, for instance, cutting down trees, destroying the ecosystem, it's very rational. But I mean, this is what people are engaged in. I mean, I have actually been called Doc Kisi and complained of some massive filling and garbage being poured into some wetland behind my house. Written letters to everybody we know. Nobody's coming to our aid, including the district assembly. So I took it upon myself to say that, let's go back to the district assembly. Let me try and do some education and see if that would change the situation. I engaged the DCE. I explained the situation to him and the impact, the time bomb they are creating. He seems, helpless. So I'm just saying this to the effect that because of, irrationality that enters in when people become hungry or whatever it is, that they can, they become problems to the whole society. That is why we have, governments, isn't it? That's why we have rules and regulations to be able to keep, the people who are getting out of coverage area, for use of better word, to be able to regulate them, not to impact on other people should a disaster happen. But unfortunately, it looks like our country, I mean, it's getting to a point. Now, the Galam says is a very, very good example. We saw in the news where it's been dug on Konongo just along the road. I mean, it took the media, I mean, for it to be stopped. So it's I think it goes beyond. There's a big challenge. I don't really know what's happening at the moment, but the institutions that have been put in place to be able to keep the irrationality are not functioning. Kind of, they are not able to do what they are supposed to do. They just look on, and we are just creating a time bomb. Ghana Water complained about very serious issues in the Western region. because of this galamsey, and it's going to get to a point they were saying that we're going to import water. People see it as a joke, but I believe if we don't stop these things now and think systemically like we are discussing here now, to get to that point where the money you have made, cannot solve the problem you have created. So I don't know how we're going to actually change this thing, but it's a big challenge. I don't know what's going to happen. I feel very, very frustrated about all that is happening, and I don't see the end in sight. So this is just a frustration I'm pouring on this platform. Probably there are people here who could also find a way of pushing things better that we are seeing, to resolve some of these issues, so we can create a better future for our children and our children's children. So this will be my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we'll wrap up. It's 40 minutes past 7. So Dr. Pierre, do you want to give us your closing remarks and then end for today, please?
Yeah, so what I've tried to do, I know, we have people who, maybe just finish uni, and others, at MD or CEO level. So it's been quite difficult trying to pitch, the content, in a way that, everyone can get something out of it, but the point I want to make about systems thinking is, it's just about seeing the big picture and not just going down a rabbit hole or just focusing on, an aspect of the problem you're trying to solve or of the situation. It's always easier to focus on the obvious factors, but if you can take a step back and think about, what seems to be causing and feeling these issues, and if you can map it up, using systems, and it's the first point, it's the starting point in the application of systems thinking. In my work, I check a lot of, design drawing for other engineers, and I use systems thinking, in doing this design review, design evaluation. I don't have to, draw diagrams and all these things, just thinking about it in systems. It could be this building. It doesn't exist in isolation. What are the adjacent structures? And I've picked up a lot of things in the past that others have, ignored or just forgotten about. By just thinking, systemically, I'm able to see the interconnections and the other factors that are related to what, I'm doing. So just thinking in systems, trying to see the different parts, acting within your system, acting within your situation, that it can be very powerful. It helps you to zoom into the problem and to zoom out of it. So you sit above it, see what's going on, and go right down to the subsystems level to understand and get a clear picture of what you are dealing with. So yes, I will encourage you to start using systems thinking. Just Google, and if you want to, contact me to, discuss systems thinking, or you have any queries after this presentation, I shared my email address. You can reach out to me, and I'll be happy to, to help. Okay, so thank you, Dr. Casey.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pierre. I do really appreciate your time with us this evening, and for every insight, knowledge, experience that you've shared with us. We truly, truly appreciate that. And I thank everyone also who connected, and wish to encourage you to always be with us and kindly share the flyers and the information when it comes around. God willing, the next Flex Connect session will be on the 29th of September. 29th of September. We're hoping to have Reverend Dr. Mrs. Apia speak to us on leadership principles to transform our lives and our leadership style. So let's look out for it. And let's make sure we share the flyers when they come around. So, Dr. Pierre, thank you so much. We truly appreciate your time with us, and so God richly bless you. And God bless everybody who connected. Have a blessed week. And we shall see you again in 4 weeks' time on the 29th of September. Thank you very much.